Well, hello. I'm Jeff Shuren, Director of the FDA's Center for Devices and Radiological Health. Welcome to today's session on collaborative communities. We have a terrific lineup of panelists. Let me begin by introducing them. Michelle Tarver, Deputy Director, CDRH's Office of Strategic Partnerships and Technology Innovation, and Chair of the Steering Committee for Collaborative Communities. Bob Giffen, Director of Research for the NEST Coordinating Center, representing the NEST Collaborative Community. Joe Sapiente, Associate Vice President, Case for Quality in MDIC, representing the Case for Quality Collaborative Community. And Jitesh Vitel, Program Director, Data Science and Technology in MDIC, representing the Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community. And during this session, you'll hear about what are collaborative communities, why they matter, the collaborative communities already established that CDRH participates in, available resources for groups seeking to create a new community, and then a deeper dive into the 3 collaborative communities for which MDIC serves as the convener. And truly impressive that despite the pandemic, MDIC and its partners continue to make great progress. We'll then hold a Q&A session with our panelists before wrapping up. CDRH's experience has been that some of the best solutions come from collaborative efforts that take into account and reflect what's important to the community. In our democracy, government is supposed to represent the people. In today's world, maybe the people should have a greater role in representing their interests, and in particular, patients. That perspective led CDRH in 2018 to launch as a strategic priority for the center what we coined collaborative communities. Unlike our more traditional forms of collaboration that tend to be project-specific or time-limited, with only a handful of partners and typically with CDRH in the lead or co-lead, a collaborative community is where the key stakeholders in a community come together to address shared challenges, achieve shared outcomes, and develop shared solutions. CDRH doesn't run it, and we participate just as one of many equal members. In this respect, a collaborative community gives patients and other stakeholders an equal seat and equal voice at the table. And if the community comes up with a solution that's in the best interest of public health and not contrary to our statutory mandates, CDRH is likely to adopt it. Already, we are seeing stakeholders who never worked together before building relationships and trust that will power these communities forward. In 2018, CDRH committed to participate in at least 10 collaborative communities by the end of calendar year 2020, a goal we achieved. As you'll hear from our panelists, the enthusiasm for collaborative communities is high and the opportunities nearly endless. In 2021, collaborative communities will move from being a CDRH strategic priority to being part of the fabric of our DNA, and increasingly how we achieve our public health mission and vision. In the future, I hope all of you join us not just as attendees at a conference, but as members of a collaborative community, driving meaningful solutions as any good neighbor would. And now I'd like to turn it over to Michelle Tarver.
Hello, I'm Michelle Tarver, and as Jeff said, collaborative communities has been one of our priorities over the past few years and is becoming part of how we do our daily business. I'd like to share with you a little bit about the collaborative community effort. Next slide. I'll first talk about why collaboration is important, which you've already heard a little bit from Jeff about that, what a collaborative community actually is and what it is not, as well as talk about what makes collaborative communities different from other collaborative efforts, share with you some of our resources, and share with you potential outcomes of a collaborative community and the ways in which it can make an impact. I'll also talk to you a little bit about some of the collaborative communities in which we're currently participating. Next slide. Collaboration is imperative. I think there have been a number of folks who have realized the benefits of collaboration. And I think that's embodied very well in this quote by Frances Hesseldine and John Whitehead, where they say that businesses and nonprofits in today's interconnected world will neither thrive nor survive with visions that are confined within the walls of their own organizations. They really need to look beyond the walls and find partners who can help achieve greater results and build the vital communities to meet challenges ahead. Collaborative communities are really a reflection of this sentiment. Next slide. These are continuing forums where public and private sector members proactively work together to achieve common objectives and outcomes, solve shared challenges, and leverage collective opportunities in an environment of trust, respect, empathy, and openness. They're a community, they're a relationship. There are some things, though, that they are not. Next slide. Collaborative communities are not led by the FDA, they're not convened by us, and they do not exist to advise the FDA. Their membership and governance aren't directed by the FDA, and they're not task force or working groups or other commissions that are put up and then taken back down. They are meant to be sustained entities that really do tackle challenges as they come along in a very complicated sphere. Next slide. I'd like to do a little bit of compare and contrast between what a collaborative community is and what a task force is. A collaborative community, as I already alluded to, is convened by an external partner. The FDA is a member, just like any other member of the community, but we don't drive it, we don't shape it, we don't manage or run it. Instead, we work together and we focus on broad outcomes that have public health impacts. There may be multiple deliverables for each particular work stream of a collaborative community, or it may be that it's just an opportunity to improve relationships, since relationships in and of itself have positive impacts on the public health. The lifespan of a collaborative community, unlike a task force, is sustained, and the duration could potentially be indefinite depending on the challenges faced by that particular community. Collaborative communities also respect and include the voices of all stakeholders, including patients, healthcare providers, and other stakeholders that aren't always considered in the conversation. They have an equal voice in the decision-making process too. Now, public-private partnerships could potentially be a collaborative community, but we've been very fortunate, as you'll hear later today, that MDIC has taken the charge of being a convener of various collaborative communities, understanding that communities that are focused on a particular challenge and has the ability to have a convener that has connections can help bring some of those stakeholders to the table and to the conversation. Next slide. We have put forward a toolkit, which is really a resource for stakeholders who are interested in establishing or participating in collaborative communities. And we encourage you to visit our website. Next slide. But I'll pull back the cover just a little bit and share with you some of the themes that are reflected in this document. We speak about the importance of collectively creating the vision for the collaborative community, reaching out and including multiple stakeholders, setting forth clear roles and responsibilities, as well as dividing up the workload so that all people are accountable for the work products that are being performed and developed by the community. We talk about the importance of effective and clear communication, being transparent, and having a moment where you pause and reflect on what the community has accomplished and adapt nimbly to address new challenges that may be facing that community. Next slide. The sectors from which the members of a collaborative community may be coming from may vary depending on the type of community. We have seen members from journal editorial staff. We've seen it from the press, medical device distributors, as well as manufacturers, foundations, academic centers, and most importantly, as we've talked about before, a concerted effort to include the patient and consumer advocacy organizations. Next slide. There are a number of different outcomes of a collaborative community. It could be the development of tools or regulatory science that helps to advance the field of that particular community. And by publishing it in peer-reviewed journals or putting forth articles, you have an opportunity to see that information transparently to the public. They also may be working on guidance or other documents that they may want to share with others about best practices for doing clinical care, as well as sharing their current thinking in a particular arena. And then, as I mentioned more than once, it's also about sometimes healing and improving relationships so that people can work together to advance those objectives. CDRH is currently participating in 10 collaborative communities, as you've heard from Jeff. They are shown here on the slide, and there are many others in which we are considering participation. We know that by working together, we all can solve these challenges more effectively. And so if you have any questions or are interested in participating in a collaborative community, we encourage you to either reach out to the communities listed on our website, also shown here on this slide, or by sending an email to our collaborative community mailbox or myself. Thank you very much for your attention, and now I turn it over to Bob.
Thank you, Michelle. Great overview of the program, and I really am happy to be here today to discuss one of those collaborative communities, the NEST collaborative community. In order to do that properly, I think let me take a minute to just give a quick overview of NEST itself. So NEST was established in 2016 when FDA awarded a grant to MDIC to establish the National Evaluation System for Health Technology. And the goal of this was to help accelerate clinical research and development of medical technologies by leveraging real-world evidence. So the NEST Coordinating Center, which we call NEST-CC, was established to carry out this mission through innovating and testing approaches to real-world evidence, largely through actually executing studies through our research network of 17 network collaborators who are large academic health centers, by and large clinical research networks, plus some other organizations. So through those network collaborators, we have conducted 11 demonstration projects and 21 test cases, which are currently in different stages of completion. About half have actually been completed, and the rest are well underway. And these test cases are giving us really great insight into what works and what doesn't, and helping us to develop methods and standards for real-world evidence. Our findings from these are published in our frameworks for data quality, research methods, and development of standards, as well as published in peer-reviewed journals and so forth. So with that background, let me turn to the collaborative community itself, which is the slide that you're looking at already. The collaborative community was established in September of 2019. It was one of the first. And it had several key goals. One was to provide a neutral forum, as was described by Michelle, to enable stakeholders to discuss. And I think I'd just like to emphasize one of the key things that we've learned, I think, in healthcare is that when things get tough and technical, it's easy to kind of close the door and try to figure things out on your own. And engaging all the collaborators can be, or all the stakeholders can be tough work, but the outcomes are much better when you do that. So it's really important. Convening meetings is sort of how we'd go about it. We convene these different stakeholders to look at different topics that we might want to take on. It also provides a sounding board for all of the different initiatives that NEST-CC itself is undertaking. So providing feedback and helping to disseminate research methods and data quality framework and active surveillance work that we're doing, and also the standards that we're developing. It also is an important way to build on the big investment we've made in the test cases by providing real-time feedback and also providing a way to promulgate the results of those studies. And finally, as Jeff emphasized earlier, it really is to foster engagement of patients. Patients are one of the most important, but least heard from groups in healthcare, and it's critically important to include them as we talk about real-world evidence. So the next slide, please. So let me talk a little bit about the composition of our group. As I mentioned, it's has a very diverse range of perspectives, including industry, health systems, patient organizations, medical societies and providers, and vendors, and others. And of course, FDA became a participating member at the very beginning in September of 2019. So each of these different stakeholders brings different perspectives and also gets different value from this. But I dare say everyone values this work, values the collaboration, and also contributes a lot to it. So all of these perspectives are important. And without having all of these stakeholders at the table, the outcomes wouldn't be as good, for sure. So in terms of participation, we have semi-annual meetings. The next one, the first one was October 2020, and it was focused on the issue of unique device identifier adoption. It was held in October 2020. The next one is coming up in September. And also when we have subgroups, they meet on an ad hoc basis throughout the year. Next slide. So some of the accomplishments of the collaborative so far, as I said, we were formed in 2019, introduced the UDI initiative as our inaugural initiative, held a public meeting, which was focused on UDI with over 100 attendees in October of 2020. We established a thought leaders group composed of experts in UDI to help better understand the challenges and develop our approaches for addressing it. And that resulted in a study that was initiated, which I'll talk about in the next slide. So the NEST Collaborative Community UDI Initiative was established to basically look at how UDIs are being used in health systems today, in the healthcare environment, and what some of the barriers are to increased adoption by UDIs, and see if there are ways that we can help move that needle forward. So the project was divided into two components. The first phase is a series of in-depth interviews to be conducted with our own network collaborators. And the second stage, after the completion of that first stage, is a large national survey of healthcare providers, large institutions, health systems, and hospitals, to further understand some of the barriers and opportunities. 5 of our collaborators are working on this project. Mayo Clinic, UCSF, Yale New Haven, Mercy Health, and Arizona State University are actually conducting the work. So far, we are well into the first phase. It was kicked off in October of last year, and we are now just beginning the process of conducting the interviews and still scheduling some. So that work will be ongoing through the end of this year, and then the second phase will begin with the survey, the national survey. As a result of both of these, the study will create a roadmap for UDIs to create sort of action items for the ecosystem to help move UDI adoption forward. Next slide. So that's where we've been and where we're going. Next slide, please. So we're establishing a new open call for members this month because we're hoping to expand and increase the diversity of our membership even further. Emphasis this time on industry, clinical research, and patient representatives. We will, as I said, have our next meeting in September, and we'll be completing the UDI evaluation study over the next year and a half. The exciting part is what we're planning now for the future. We have a slate of new initiatives that are under consideration, and we're also open to many others. The first one is the formation of a real-world evidence learning collaborative. So we've been finding lessons learned from real-world evidence studies. There's many of them, and they're from all over the place. So the FDA has done some great work looking at submissions. We've been looking for lessons learned from our own test cases. And of course, the literature is filled with real-world evidence studies that include many lessons. So aggregating all of those and finding a systematic way to make them useful and disseminate them would be we think a terrific opportunity for the collaborative community. Secondly, a series of workshops on patient-centered research. Critically important to embed patients more directly in the research, and it's one of the harder things to do because medical devices are very important to patients. In many cases, they're implanted in their bodies, and if something goes wrong, it's a very personal thing. On the other hand, real-world evidence is sort of automatically a little bit distanced from the patient because we're often looking at observational data and retrospective data, and in many cases not having any contact with the patient. So we think it's kind of a perfect opportunity for the collaborative because it's both very difficult and very important. And then finally, we're hoping to establish some additional partnerships with some of the key organizations that are looking at UDI along with us. There's a broad-based effort to advance UDI adoption. And so reaching out to others and a little more formally partnering will be, I think, beneficial. So looking forward to answering questions later in the session, but that concludes my remarks. And now I will turn it over to Joe Sapiente.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. I'm Joe Sapiente. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Case for Quality collaborative community and take you through some of the history of Case for Quality along with some of the active programs that we have ongoing today. Next slide, please. The Case for Quality Steering Committee meets on a regular basis, and recently we spent much of our time in these sessions focused on strategic session. In that session, we came up with 4 themes that are going to require further development and exploration by the steering committee sponsor. We'll be wrapping that up in the next few weeks. One area that we felt was important was the increased engagement with the other members or key stakeholders within our ecosystem, mainly patients, providers, payers. And we also recognize opportunities within the small and mid-size manufacturing companies as well. Many of you may have seen the 2-day Case for Quality forum, which we held in April. That gave us an opportunity to update our participants on the MEDIAS workstream, Safe Space, the Accelerate Sustainable Capability Program, VIP, the Make Kappa Cool program. And we had 2 really very good sessions on leadership engagement focused on the quality culture, and a discussion on the virtual technology and the impact that virtual technology has had on all of us over the last year and a half with the pandemic, and the impact that that's had on our ability to audit and assess companies as well as work collaboratively. Within the work streams and programs within Case for Quality is the MEDIAS and the Safe Space. MEDIAS is an area where we are focused on the data collection. As many of you know, data collection and data sources vary. So we're looking at ways to be able to collect data in a much more consistent way. And how does that data influence some of our decisions, specifically areas within risk management, recalls, adverse event reporting? So are there trends and signals that we can then use to help further advance companies and making decisions and looking at trends? Safe Space will give us that opportunity to have much broader conversations about the effectiveness of our programs, as well as taking on some bigger projects that we all may be experiencing, but individually cannot solve, but collectively we may be able to solve them together. So that group is working, those two groups are working very well. They're meeting on a regular basis. They're making very good progress in governance and outlining data and use cases for further exploration. The Make Kappa Cool, many of you are hopefully part of the Make Kappa Cool pilot. We've seen excellent progress in how companies have embraced the concept of a fast-track Kappa process within their existing programs. We see a lot of good data coming out of those programs around efficiency, time savings, getting into implementation of corrective actions very earlier, because they're able to risk-base their decisions and looking at CAPAs that are able to implement much faster. And so we're helping organizations improve faster when you're able to implement your corrective actions and mitigations sooner. So we're very excited about that program. We've extended that program, that pilot program, through July. So we're hoping to get even more data from the existing participants leading up to a final white paper that the group is working on as well. The culture of quality, as I mentioned, we did a deep dive in our April forum on the leadership engagement on quality culture. That's a playbook that the team has come up with, and we've actually now created a series of webinars. We've just recently completed our first webinar in leadership engagement focused on quality culture, and we had two leading quality leaders from Baxter and Stryker participate in the session to talk about their personal experiences as well as their company experience with implementing a culture of quality, not just within the quality and manufacturing organization, but enterprise-wide. The VIP program, which is our voluntary improvement program, was built off of one of our original 4 work streams in the case for quality on maturity. This program was recently transitioned to a full program, which validates the assumptions that we made in the value of maturity as companies look to drive quality improvements, capabilities of their staff, developing their people around a quality culture, as well as the ability to produce high quality, safe medical devices consistently within their manufacturing firms. So it's very important that we continue this program because of the value that we're seeing in the results from the pilot and the drive and the pathway of continuous improvement. The Accelerated Sustainable Capability pilot is something that was built on the foundation of the VIP program. This program is specifically intended to help companies that may not have the regulatory status that we're looking for within the VIP program, but they've identified areas for improvement, or they've had a situation where following an inspection, they have areas where they want to focus on the improvement area. So we've encouraged sites to participate in this pilot. We're targeting 9 sites. We currently have 3 sites enrolled and onboarded. They will be going through an appraisal process, which is very similar to the VIP program appraisal process. And we also have a 4th site that just recently applied for this program. So they're going through the review process now. The success of the Case for Quality collaborative community has been, I think, mentioned earlier in terms of engagement with a variety of key stakeholders across our ecosystem. And the thing that's unique about our MDIC is we've had that ability to reach out to that variety of stakeholders to be able to share across the table and collaborate on a number of issues. So as we look forward to 2021, we're looking at other opportunities where companies and our stakeholders may be struggling or looking for opportunities for improvement. So we continue our path of collaboration, looking at these existing programs, looking at programs that will then further our mission and vision for that high quality, safe and effective medical devices. With that, I'd like to encourage anyone who's interested in participating in any of these programs to reach out to MDIC or myself at Case for Quality, and we'd be happy to get you engaged and help you participate and get a seat at the table as we work towards our common mission and vision. With that, I'd like to pass it over to Jitesh to talk about the pathology innovation.
Thank you, Joe. I'm Jitesh Vittal, Program Director for Data Science and Technology at MDIC. I'm super excited to give an overview of Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community, as well as the updates from the activities that we have been accomplishing in the last couple of months. Next slide. The Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community brings together a broad range of stakeholders to accelerate the development and delivery of regulatory science initiatives in the pre-competitive space that modernize the clinical practice of pathology. Specifically, this will include digital pathology and its major enabling fields of machine learning, artificial intelligence, imaging informatics, engineering, computational science, as well as data science. Our aim is to develop key performance indicators to monitor and communicate progress on how pre-competitive regulatory science can drive innovation in pathology. The efforts of bringing the wide range of stakeholders in this field began in 2018, and we informally called ourselves as Alliance for Digital Pathology then. And in December 2020, after many meetings, conferences, workshops, and so on, we have developed a more streamlined vision and uncharted documents, embracing the true spirit and vision for the collaborative community that Jeff and Michelle just outlined in their remarks here, and elevated ourselves as a collaborative community, of course, with FDA participation, specifically CDRH, and under CDRH, OPEC and OSCEL. And we relabeled ourselves into a more inclusive title, Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community. Let me stress, we strive to achieve three things: to unlock the potential of digital pathology using regulatory science approaches to help as many as patients possible. Then to train and educate each other in an interdisciplinary fashion with a focus again on pre-competitive regulatory science. And third, to create an environment that motivates and encourages all stakeholders to move the field of pathology forward. Next slide. Though MDIC as such is a membership-based organization where members do pay dues, except in case of governmental and academic organizations, but the Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community is established with no membership fees, and almost all the activities, information about the collaborative community is available freely on our website here. We have currently over 400 members. Next slide, please. So just give a little more insight into the community. Currently, we have 9 working groups. These working groups address topics that include, but that not limited to, pre-analytical variables, frameworks for slide scanning, reference materials, interoperability, data exchange, image format, and so on, best practices, machine learning and AI algorithms, practical use cases, and of course, payer interaction, reimbursement. And for financial sustainability, it is important that we do address how we can translate successful innovation through reimbursement strategy and so on. Like Michelle mentioned, the work products from each of these groups can be documents, white papers, or other educational materials on regulatory science, maybe software tools and statistical packages, peer-reviewed publications, protocols, and it can be some kind of pre-competitive programs as mock submission to FDA, MDDT program, surveys, forums, and seminars, and so on. Just want to highlight that one of the working groups here specifically focuses on trainees and educational aspects. Next slide. So I just want to give an overview how exactly we accomplish things. So let's assume you have a project, and that project has to be more aligned with, or has to be aligned with the regulatory science, and bring the project to the PICC, and we have a steering committee, and the steering committee helps to organize the project and find the collaborators. I want to stress that we have to identify projects which are in the pre-competitive space, and PICC As such, we're not involved in the project itself. We may help to secure some fundings or identify funding agencies and so on. And I also want to stress here the project framework. As Michelle mentioned, we try our level best to account for the patient perspectives by including either patients or patient advocacy groups. We investigate and develop methods and tools for evaluation of effectiveness, safety, and quality, and to specify risks and benefits in the pre-competitive phase. And then we try to help delineate and strategize the sequence of clinically meaningful deliverables, and to encourage the streamline and development of ground truth data sets and clarify regulatory pathways by investigating relevant regulatory science questions. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, as an alliance, we are now in existence for 2 years, and as a collaborative community for about six months. I'm super proud to share some of these matrices here. With in-person meetings in conjunction with the major conferences, independent events, and a lot of online events ever since we are in the pandemic mode, we already have 3 peer-reviewed publications. Some of the working groups are now at various stages of their initial deliverables, which includes even MDDT submission. You can see here that we have roughly equal representation from the manufacturers, which is device and diagnostic manufacturers, as well as software developers and so on. And then academia and clinical or healthcare delivery organization. And I think our third main stakeholder group here is government and regulatory bodies, which include FDA, NIH, and NIST, and so on. I haven't shown here, we have about 13% of this our members representing international community. Next slide, please. As mentioned, we are always open to additional and more stakeholders and subject matter experts. If you have questions or if you want to collaborate with us, please contact me or contact us at picc@mdic.org. Thank you. Now I'll turn back to Jeff.
Great. Thank you, Jitesh. Thank you, everyone, for the great presentations. Let's go ahead and turn to the Q&A portion of our panel. And let me kick it off first with a question to Michelle. So you spoke to us about the many sectors and members of collaborative communities can represent, including patients and advocacy organizations. Could you comment on why it's so important for collaborative communities to foster patient engagement and what this might look like?
Patient engagement, as you know, is intentional by definition. And I think that it's really important that collaborative communities look for patients that may reflect either the underlying condition that their collaborative community is addressing, or may be directly impacted by the work that the collaborative community may put out. As you know, solutions that are retrofitted don't usually fit well. And so we want to make sure that the solutions are working for all the stakeholders that are most impacted. And the most important stakeholder impacted by all of our solutions in the healthcare sector are the patients. So reaching out to them, identifying them, and including and empowering them to be active contributors in the process is critical.
All right, thank you. Now, Bob, you gave a snapshot of the NEST collaborative community's focus on unique device identifiers as its inaugural initiative. Can you share some more about why it's so important to real-world evidence research and where your UDI efforts are headed next?
Sure, thanks for asking. Yeah, UDI is absolutely critically important in healthcare in general, and in so many stakeholders can benefit from greater adoption, whether it's device safety monitoring or supply chain efficiency, and the one that we're very concerned about is real-world evidence. I think many people agree that real-world evidence will not achieve its full potential without UDI making it easier to track products in claims and EHR databases and so forth. So I think there are two issues. There are technical issues, developing ways to better reconcile UDIs and use them more effectively in the patient care setting and consistently identify products and their characteristics. And then there's the work with stakeholders to help them overcome barriers to adoption and to understand the value of using UDIs and addressing concerns about their use that frankly impede some of the development, I think. So I think where we're going is we're developing our roadmap. We'll be looking at ways that we can attack both of these approaches, and there's a lot of work to do, but the promise is really enormous for healthcare.
The promise is enormous. But let me follow up and maybe talk a little bit about the diverse stakeholders involved in this work and how the collaborative community process has enabled them to make valuable contributions to the real-world evidence enterprise.
Yeah, absolutely. It's. I think I said at the very beginning of my talk, sometimes we talk to ourselves too much, and it's so important to engage, patients, providers, all of the different stakeholders in this enterprise, because real-world evidence has the potential to improve the adoption of technology across the board, and all that means for the different stakeholder groups. So I think it's really critically important to make sure that you're hearing all of the voices out there, that we don't ever try to understand the problems and develop solutions in a vacuum. And so frankly, when I joined Nest back in December, I was thrilled to learn I was going to be taking this over, because I had worked at the IOM and we convened lots of meetings and dealt with lots of stakeholders, and I knew how important it is to have that perspective in everything you do. So that's the short answer.
Thank you. Let me turn to Joe. You mentioned that the Case for Quality Collaborative Community Steering Committee is in the final stages of their strategic planning process. So what are some of the themes or next steps the committee is focused on in the process?
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, sure. So when we started the strategic planning process, we actually looked back at where we were in 2016 and some of the themes that came out of those, the surveys from the steering committee. And what we found was there's a lot of interest in programs that we even talked about a few years ago, one being risk management. So we're doing a deep dive in the risk management. The other area that we talked about was digital transformation. That was a lot of folks within the steering committee felt that the digital transformation was something that we needed to dig into further. And what we found there was that because of the amount of work that's being done in digital health and digital tools that are available, we're going to continue to monitor that, but be part of those conversations members in the collaborative community, if you will, when it comes to how is digital health touching real world evidence. And we talked about all of the tools and the way it's coming in. So we've elected to not do an active engage within Case for Quality, but to remain engaged, leveraging the advanced manufacturing group that's being put forward. We'll be able to be part of that process as well, digital tools and the digital transformation on with advanced manufacturing. The two areas that we needed further engagement will eventually become programs is how are we enhancing our engagement with small and mid-sized companies. Right now, we do have small and mid-sized companies engaged in Case for Quality, but very similar to your comment about, we want to be able to talk to everyone. Do we always consider the ability of a small company to adapt some of these programs, because they do have limitations? They may be small startups. So we want to be able to make sure that we address their needs as well. And then finally, the area of supply chain management. Something the pandemic taught us was the stresses that on supply chain and the resiliency of the supply chain. So we're looking at doing some things there, and bringing in some third parties to help us understand how are they managing their supply chain. So contract manufacturers, for one, would be an example that we would like to do further exploration and potentially have a project come out focused on supply chain management.
So let me, you had mentioned about establishing programs. What can we look forward to seeing from the voluntary improvement program now that it's being transitioned from a pilot to a full program?
So within the pilot program or within the program itself, we don't anticipate too many changes. But I think the fact that the pilot is now transitioned to a program gives us that staying power. It recognizes the value of the pilot and the lessons learned. So what we anticipate is further participation, increased number of companies and sites engaged in the program, and then leveraging the lessons learned and the results that we've collected through the program to then help drive some of our strategic planning. What are some of those other areas that we can now take from a certain practice area and maybe build a program around a practice area where there's a lot of commonality in terms of success or challenge and opportunity. So we continue. So we're very excited about the program. We're very excited the fact that it's sustainable and scalable, and it's feeding our opportunity to sort of drive our strategic planning going forward.
Well, that's terrific. Let me turn to Jitesh. You've outlined a vision and scope of the Pathology Innovation Collaborative community to tackle regulatory science questions. So can you explain how regulatory science can enable or help with moving artificial intelligence tools into the clinic?
Thank you, Jeff. That's actually a very, very important question. I mean, at the end of the day, what we are all strive to do is to get this innovative tools to the patients or bedside. As we all know that AI tools, artificial intelligence tools, let it be produced by the companies or researchers, they're very, very innovative. And of course, it promises to improve the diagnostics in many cases. At a very high level, I think we and others, we need to facilitate innovation in this space. Now, to get to the clinic, actually, the regulatory evaluations are really key. But the challenge here is this is a very innovative field, complicated field, interdisciplinary nature. And in many cases, let's assume if the product or the tool is specific to one company or one particular case, then of course they can approach regulators, whether it is FDA or other international regulatory bodies through pre-sub or Q-sub and so on. But what we are learning is there are more issues or challenges which we can tackle as a group, which includes, of course, regulatory bodies like FDA. So what PICC, Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community, is doing is providing this platform for suggestions and idea. And we are creating, in most cases, scientific data to inform all the stakeholders, which include, of course, regulatory decision makers, so that we can accelerate the innovation and get these tools to the patients a little bit sooner, more effectively, and so on.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, I'm now going to ask a few questions. This is for everybody. So we're going to run down the line. We're going to start with Michelle. We'll go Bob, Joe, Jitesh. So Jitesh, you get to play cleanup on all of these, all right? So let me kick it off with the following. What's the best way for people to engage with the different collaborative communities within MDIC? And just to add, what avenues can forum attendees use today to step in and contribute to solving a challenge that's a passion of theirs or a barrier to their organization's success? So let me start with Michelle.
So my response will be very short. I think that we have on our website links to a number of the different collaborative communities. I encourage you to visit their sites and contact their conveners. If you're interested in a collaborative community in a topic area where we're not participating as a member, we'd be happy to hear from you and encourage you to reach out to our mailbox.
All right, thank you, Bob.
Yeah, I would just say that so we are having an open call for new members. So that's this month, and but you don't have to wait for the open call. We are actually really excited to hear from people and we encourage people to reach out to the website and the email listed there on the website. So and we will follow up. And I think we're very anxious to have, to hear from people and to hear all of the different perspectives. So you will hear from us.
Joe.
So I would have to agree. I think we have ways to get engaged with MDIC, the collaborative communities, any of the working groups. Certainly there are links and websites that you can go to. But I think forums like this and engagement gives folks the visibility to what we're doing, gives them a little bit more awareness. And as we talk about programs that we have today, we're always open to listening to what are the challenges. And that's what I think we're looking at, the challenges from a perspective of the small or even startup companies. Maybe they want to do certain things, but they just can't. So help some of the programs that we're doing, or put something up that they can leverage themselves. So again, encourage them to participate in the meetings, become members, help be part of the ecosystem. We've always, and I think I could speak for the community presenters, we have seen very high engagement from a variety of stakeholders, which is really encouraging. And that's the beauty of the collaborative community, is that we all have a seat at the table, and we are able to speak in that neutral environment and then bring those challenges forward to then decide to take them on. So encourage you guys to get involved. We'd love to have everybody. The more the better.
Absolutely. And Jitesh.
Yeah, I think all of the above actually. So for PICC, Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community, you can reach us from the website which Michelle on FDA site suggested or mentioned, or we have MDIC, a website, MDIC email, is as simple as emailing us at picc@mdic.org. And what we are actually doing is we are not only promoting PICC, we are promoting the whole collaborative community concept. So we are regrouping or relinking back to FDA's collaborative community page from all the individual pages related to our collaborative community.
All right. Last question. This is lightning round, very fast response. What is the one thing you would like to see a particular collaborative community or collaborative communities as a whole accomplish in the next 12 months? Michelle.
I really think the relationship building, where everyone feels like they have a seat at the table and their voice is heard. I think that changes the culture.
All right.
I think for me, it's getting more effective patient engagement, because that's one of the tougher problems. And it's so critical in medical devices. So I'd like to see the awareness of what we're doing be broader, and the participation much greater.
All right, great. Joe.
I think as well, I think we also have the opportunity to demonstrate that through the collaborative community, you have an equal voice. And the fact that, ideas are coming from everywhere. And I think the value from a former representative from a medical device company who used to sit around the table saying, why isn't the FDA embracing this idea? I think the tables have reversed now, or the agency has come to us and said, we need more people to come to us and work with us. So I think that engagement and collaboration and showing that we're all in this, we're all committed to this. I'd like to see a lot more cooperation from folks that are still somewhat skeptical, and let's get them to the table as well.
Oh, terrific. All right, Jitesh, you get the final say.
Yeah, and in fact, we have at PICC multiple projects that touches different aspects of TPLC, total product life cycle. And if we are able to bring it to the deliverable stage, of course we are in existence only for past 6-7 months now as a tight group, that will actually demonstrate that in pre-competitive space we can accomplish very meaningful things. That will be a couple of deliverables. We are at various stages, but that will be a great success story which will promote this whole concept and seed additional collaborative communities.
Well, that is a perfect high note to end on. Let me just take a moment to thank our panelists. Fantastic job. I hope you enjoyed today's session, got a lot out of it, and I hope you're encouraged, if you're not already a participant in collaborative community, look for opportunities to get engaged. Thank you all.
Thank you.